Hey everyone, I'm Steve, and this is Base Reality. And today's episode is Fearing Our Own Powers. And I just wanted to read a quote from Marianne Williamson, who, by the way, is running for president in 2024. She ran for president in 2020, and she's a Course in Miracles student and very spiritual. She wrote several books, but one of her books that I really enjoyed was her book called A Return to Love. And it's filled with just amazing prayers and wisdom. And one of her quotes reads like this: Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates others. So this is a very powerful statement about using our powers, allowing ourselves to open up more. In one of the statements I heard by Abraham, channeled by Esther Hicks, he said, I think it's a he said basically that you cannot be sick enough to make a sick person well, and you cannot be poor enough to make a poor person wealthy. And so this idea of why do we believe in this lack? Where does it come from? Another statement from the Bhagavad Gita is you are what you believe in. You become that which you believe you can become. And there's also another famous quote by Henry Ford that says something along the lines like, whether a man believes he can do something or cannot do something, either way he is right. And in A Course in Miracles, it alludes to why we want to be small. Why do we want to keep our powers down? In the Plato's cave, it also mentions about a prisoner being released, seeing the light, seeing the truth, and then coming back into the cave to enlighten the other two prisoners that are still chained inside the cave. And the prisoners become violent towards him. And actually, I think in one version of the story that I saw, they actually attack and kill the person. And that's a reference to Socrates, Plato's reference to Socrates, how he was trying to spread wisdom, not so much telling people what the truth was, but teaching them critical thinking, how to look at the world, how to question themselves, how to question the government. And the government didn't like it and put him to death. And so this idea is why are we afraid of, truly afraid, not so much of being shunned and shamed in the mainstream media, canceled in today's culture, and that's been going on for thousands of years. Why do we not want to get into our power and allow it to shine? And A Course in Miracles states that the reason is because we feel unconscious guilt. So those two words, unconscious guilt, is what we are harboring within because we feel like when we separated from God, which didn't truly happen, you can't separate from the ocean as a water droplet. You can't separate from all that is, because there's nothing else outside all that is, because all that is all that is. And so basically, when we think we've separated, and the Course in Miracles talks about the stages we went through to partition our mind out of our awareness of our divinity and God connection. Then we entered a construct. And this construct, there's a lot of theories about this construct, but it appears that there's this energetic sort of game that's being spun, that's being created by some pretty big players. You can think of it like in Dungeons and Dragons as a dungeon master. And there's a big, and some people think it's actually the Lucifer, that's where the term Lucifer comes from, is that there's an archangel, something very powerful that is generating this game. And so we have the ability to buy tickets and go into this game. And when you go into this game, you adopt this other mindset because you need something to express yourself. Because we've sort of partitioned off our God consciousness, now when we enter the game, we need something else that we can pour the consciousness into or through that lens. And that is the ego. Some people also call it the Sata or Satan mind or the mortal mind. And that's where the term evil comes from. And it just means, or sin, it just means error. So when you're inside this game, you are distorted. You are upside down completely, 180. So from God's reality to the ego's reality to this game's reality, it's completely upside down. It's completely insane, and it's completely genius. And so when people come down here, they think that there's a guilt that we place into our unconscious containers, our unconscious and subconscious containers that are actually above us. People think it's actually below us, but it's actually above us. And this unconscious guilt is what keeps us from, and this is part of the deal. When you buy the ticket to come into the game, you buy this idea that you've burned down heaven and that God is pissed and that he is looking for the person with the matches. And if you show up in your power and start allowing yourself to come into your power, then the unconscious guilt says, you're the one with the matches. You're the one that has the power. You're the one that had the ability to burn down heaven. And so here comes God, stomp, 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 coming to smite thee. And that's absolutely not true. When I had my experience 10 years ago where I crossed over, this was all just burned away. When I experienced God firsthand, first of all, it was just, I cried uncontrollably because it was so beautiful. The love was so complete. It's so unconditional. It's just a love you don't experience here on earth. It was amazing. And I saw that God adores us. And so when we come into this game and we do all this stuff, it's a theater. It's not really happening. It's like actors on a stage. Nothing is really affecting God. Nothing is affecting heaven. Nothing is truly affecting our true selves. But that's part of the ego's deception, is that, yes, it is. And God is going to, and that's part of what Christianity misteaches, is that you are a sinner, even though someone died for your sins, but you're still a sinner, and you still have to atone, and you still have to confess, and you have to go through all this other BS. And actually, those misteachings are keeping people in their smallness, and so when you continue to stay in your fear, when you don't connect with your inner kingdom and connect with your Christhood and start bringing that forth, you'll just keep reincarnating over and over and over again. And so the church tries to teach that if you stay small, then you'll go to heaven. And that's simply not true. That's not what being humble and being meek means. It means connecting to your divinity, connecting to your greatness. And people say, well, isn't connecting to your greatness narcissistic? And actually connecting to your greatness is actually humility, because you are accepting God's judgment. That's what Judgment Day means, is when you come back to your when you come back to God's judgment. So when God created you and judged you once, and will only judge you once for all time. And when he created you perfect, because that's all God can create. God creates only the perfect. But when we hop into this game, we think we're broken, we're losers, we're stained, we're not worthy, we're sinners, all this nonsense. And that's what actually keeps us from returning home. So some of these teachings that we're seeing on the planet right now are actually part of the game. These games that are meant to continue to deceive and to keep us in the game. This game is it was meant to have a one-way ticket. But that's impossible. It's a round trip. And so as people start to wake up, so when you're actually behaving in a maladaptive way, when you're behaving as broken, when you're behaving as sick, when you're behaving as small, you're actually being arrogant. And people have a tough time with this. They're like, how would that be arrogant? Because you're going against God. Because you're actually taking God's definitions and saying these aren't real and just throwing them in the trash. So that's arrogance. Saying, I know what's right. I have the right judgment. God doesn't really know what he's saying. I know it's right. I'm broken. I'm stained. I'm a loser. All this kind of stuff. And so that's arrogance. So saying I am great, not great as in like I'm great over people and everyone worships at my feet. Not that kind of greatness. The greatness of I am that I am. I am great with God flowing through me. That is that humility. That is saying that like Jesus said, these things I do, ye will also do, and more. So he was teaching greatness. He was teaching you to fall in the path, but the church tried to teach him as, he's prime creator. You can't follow in his path. You're a sinner, blah, blah, blah. So that's the reason why we don't connect with our powers. And so what are some of the powers that we can have? Healing. One of the things after I had my experience, I had done some marathon running and I had bad knee pain and hip pain. And I was really discouraged to think that I was going to have to go through these surgeries and all this kind of stuff. And they hurt weekly. And so I actually learned a Buddhist prayer shortly after my experience. It was probably about 2 years after my experience that I was able to actually heal my knee and heal my hip for all time. And that was, probably about 8 years ago, and it hasn't come back since. So you can heal intuition. You can have intuition about things. You can manifest things, synchronicity, prosperity, joy, adventure, connection, creativity, etc. Feel like drawing? Do it. Feel like writing a book? Do it. Feel like making these YouTube videos? Do it. You are free, and you are powerful, and you are all that is. And so it is. Amen. I love you all. Thanks for watching. Take care.